Misconceptions can lead to all kinds of issues, arguments, problems, stress, conflict, for those who use wheelchairs. And I think it's really important to really talk about other people who use wheelchairs. And, to understand that it is not only those with spinal cord injuries. Even the United Spinal Cord Association knows this. And so that's why they've included other people who use wheelchairs. Um, so it's the United Spinal Association, and they know that other people need wheelchairs as well. And so, it is so important for us to be able to verbalize that somehow, that, because otherwise people with COPD sometimes use wheelchairs because their breathing capacity doesn't allow them to walk as much as they would want to. There are people with cerebral palsy that walking a long distance is just awful and painful for them. And it doesn't mean that they have a spinal cord problem. It means they have a walking problem that was developed from the brain. Um, there are other people with heart conditions that their heart doesn't pump enough blood through their body for them to be able to have the strength to walk distances. So they use a wheelchair. There are people who, like in my case, that my spine, not spinal cord, but my spine is in bad shape. So, and it's as it crushes down, it is crushing nerves in my legs specifically, and that doesn't allow me to walk distances. So the wheelchair is really critical for me to reduce pain and be able to survive my day. So spinal cord so far is okay. Someday it might not be, but for now it's okay. So, that is so important for the public to understand that all kinds of people use wheelchairs. People recovering from surgery, people who've had a stroke, people who have had double amputations, people who, so the list can go on and on and on. And people who have had terrible accidents and who have had both legs crushed, repaired, however, crushed. So for them, they can walk but very short distances, and they need a wheelchair to be able to do their daily tasks. So I have a friend who has one leg that was completely crushed and twice, and the pain is excruciating. So he uses a wheelchair on a daily basis to keep his pain down and to be able to do his life. So, if you need a tool to be able to share this with family or friends, please feel free to use this video to let them know that there's all kinds of people who use wheelchairs, not only those who are paralyzed. Hello, everyone. My name is Lisa, and you have landed in World Wheelchair Warriors. And yes, my brain is working today. So the other day I just couldn't get out the title of my channel. But this is an important video, I think, to have as a tool that you can share with others about wheelchair usage. And I've talked about this in the past, types of wheelchairs that are used and the reasons why. For instance, I use a power wheelchair versus a manual wheelchair, you would think, okay, so if it's just her spine, but it's not. It's my shoulders too. So I can't propel myself in a manual wheelchair. I'm more familiar with a manual wheelchair. However, my therapist did not want me destroying my body more than it already is. So I grew up in a farm, did heavy work on the farm. So, how they use it and where they use it. Sometimes they use it only at home. Sometimes they only use it when they go out. Sometimes, and, so there are issues with people who go to the store, for instance, and they get out of their car, they gingerly walk to the back of their car, and they get their wheelchair out. And so if somebody's watching them, a Karen perhaps, they blow up and say, "You don't need a wheelchair, blah, blah, blah." It's like, what are you doing? I'm going to tell management that you just got up and walked over to your wheelchair. And, and this person that I'm talking about, a good friend, he had his leg crushed and suffers from extreme pain. They fixed it, they put a lot of rods in, they patched it up, but there's more pain than it's worth. So I'm hoping he's doing well. But those are one of the cases in which it's important not to judge. There's other people, a gal with COPD who was on this channel, and she dared to get a power wheelchair. And she gets out now. She can do her own grocery shopping. She can go out and watch the movies, whatever she wants. And before, she was locked up in her home because she didn't have the capacity to walk and do the usual things that people need to do. So she's doing great, and that's the important thing, for people to do better. Wheelchairs are a tool. They're not a statement of, "I'm paralyzed, help me, help me." No. So if you thought that wheelchairs were only for those who are paralyzed, think again. Get to know some wheelchair users. And we have all kinds of wheelchair users here. We really do. And they are all welcome because, we have the elderly, we have the young, we have the in-between that use wheelchairs and need to know, okay, what do I do with this wheelchair? How do I take care of it? It needs to last a long time. I bought it on my own, or I went through insurance, so the rules and regulations of your insurance, when you can update it and get a new one, all that kind of stuff is important to know. So the life with a wheelchair is more than sitting in it. It's taking care of it. It's cleaning it. It's making sure it's functioning for your next outing. It's all that kind of stuff. It's like having a car, practically. These days, with the cost of, with the wheelchairs, yeah, you need to take care of it. So it's really, really important. So know that people with cerebral palsy use wheelchairs, that people with cardiac problems, lung problems, with operations that didn't go right, problems, people who've had strokes. So these are, in my case, with a spine that's, not behaving. So people say, I know the nurses around here sometimes mumble, but that's okay. They need to understand that my wheelchair is a tool, and I use it a lot to keep the pain down because I wanna do life. I want to do life. So many wheelchairs users are ambulatory. I can walk a little. So I have a big old brace there for when I'm going to walk. So wheelchair users are used for a wide range of reasons, including pain, fatigue, balance issues, energy conservation, or for longer distances. So really important to know that based on their condition, based on their needs. Don't be surprised or judgmental if you see someone who uses a wheelchair, stands up, or takes a few steps because they can. Now, I don't because sitting, standing, that will kill me for the rest of the day. I also have a condition called fibromyalgia. Um, when someone when someone has a back issue, a lot of times fibromyalgia will creep in, and we don't know why. But it happens, and it happened to me. So fibromyalgia will wear you out. Fibromyalgia will cause you nerve pain everywhere, wherever it feels like it wants to go. And that kills me. So the wheelchair helps me conserve energy and prevent fibromyalgia from slapping me in the face for the day. People of all ages and health conditions use wheelchairs for various reasons, including temporary injuries, chronic conditions, or congenital disabilities like my own. Many wheelchair users are younger, active, and healthy. I would say in general, you could say that I'm healthy when other things are not falling apart. So avoid making assumptions, you and I, about someone's age or health based on their wheelchair use. So sometimes I catch people saying, "You're so young," or "Oh, you're so beautiful. You're too beautiful to be in a wheelchair." People, they have to use the tool, and it doesn't matter their age or their beauty. So while there are challenges, wheelchair users live full, active, and joyful lives. They work, travel, have families, pursue hobbies, and contribute to society. And we do that in so many ways. So um, the wheelchair is a tool, and that's an important word. It's a tool, it's not a fix all. It's a tool for independence and freedom, not a symbol of tragedy or inspiration. Now, let me get to that point. So it's not a symbol of, that person's life ended. No, not at all. So, my throat's a little dry, so excuse me. So don't ever express pity. They have a wheelchair, that's a gift. There are parts in the world that people don't have wheelchairs and they suffer. They crawl around, they have to be carried around. So we are gifted in Europe and the United States and some countries in the East. They're gifted in having a wheelchair. In some places, they are truly not. So anytime you have the opportunity to donate to an organization that makes wheelchairs and donates them, please do, because that'll help someone who desperately needs a wheelchair and can't get one because of the cost. So, and when people say, "Oh, you're such an inspiration," I don't get that. I'm just doing life. I'm not attempting to inspire anyone. I'm just using a wheelchair in my daily life to do my life. So just like the person in front of me who says I'm such an inspiration. Um, I don't know what would be an inspiring life, but certainly using a wheelchair should not be an inspiring situation. So try to avoid saying, "Oh, you're such an inspiration." You know, you could say, "I admire you for these things," but we don't attempt to inspire anyone. So here's one of the myths: you should always help a wheelchair user without asking. It's okay to touch or push someone's wheelchair without permission. So what do you think? Here's the answer. A wheelchair is an extension of that person's personal space. Always ask before offering to help. That's really important. I can't stand it when somebody tries to push my wheelchair because it's power. It's a power wheelchair, and once I take my hand off of the joystick, the brakes are on. So, and never touch or move someone's wheelchair without their explicit consent. So you have to ask them permission, always. They will let you know if they need assistance. Sometimes they don't need assistance. They don't want assistance. They have very, very good training to get around. So, you know, I have specific training for using a power wheelchair. People in manual wheelchairs have their training. So we are and want to be independent. Now, if you see somebody struggling or, you know, they're not feeling well, you can go up and ask if they need any assistance. If they say no, then the answer is no. But you need to respect their space. So, you know, here's another good one. Wheelchair users are inspirational. Well, here we were just talking about it. While some find inspiration in overcoming adversity, because that's what they're looking at, many wheelchair users just want to be seen as ordinary people, you know, doing ordinary things. Constant inspiration, what we call inspiration porn, can be patronizing. So, you know, we don't want to be an inspiration to anyone. We're just doing ordinary life with a tool that has wheels on it. That's it. so, so acknowledge the achievements. Just say, you know, but avoid glorifying everyday tasks. So that's important, you know, to acknowledge achievements. You know, I admire you. I'm not sure I would be able to do it, kind of thing. So all, and this is another myth, all public places are accessible now because of laws of the ADA. Not true. We struggle with this every day. Not every store, not every agency, not every venue is accessible. Still, while laws have improved accessibility, yes, many places are still not fully accessible, or accessible features are poorly designed or maintained. True accessibility is an ongoing effort, and that's so true. There are restaurants there are certain buildings that are out of code that they don't have to be accessible because they're older than the ADA. So they don't make any efforts to become accessible. And so those venues, those services are not accessible to us because there are steps. There's 3 steps to get in. And here we are stuck, not being able to get in. So we have to always, those buildings that are older than the ADA, we are constantly encouraging the owners, encouraging management to please find a way to make it accessible. There's a building not far from here that was built before 1990, and they still made it accessible. So I love that place because they made an effort to find a way to make it accessible So before I was in a wheelchair, I went there, and now I'm going there all the time because it's easy to get in there. And they made the choice to make it accessible, and they did a good job. So um, so that's really important. Here's another one. It's okay to lean on or rest things on someone's wheelchair. Guess what? Don't do that. Again, it's their personal space. This is my apparatus that, I have to keep control over. And when someone bumps into it or starts tapping on it or starts leaning on it, I feel unnerved because I can feel everything that I'm not doing. I can feel if someone's doing something to my wheelchair. And then I have to turn around, figure out who it is, what's going on, So it's very unnerving when someone does that. And I'm expressing my own personal feelings. Some people feel angry, when they're in a wheelchair and people are, kids sometimes, we're alert to this. Kids sometimes come running up to us because they've never seen anybody in a wheelchair. They want to figure out what that is. And, I have a lot of patience with children to teach them what's going on. Why am I in a wheelchair? Why am I in a chair with wheels? Because that's what they see. And what the joystick does and all that kind of stuff. So it's an educational moment for this child. And sometimes the moms are overprotective, but I say, no, it's okay. It's okay for us to talk about it. So sometimes a mom hearing our stories is important because then they have words to be able to explain to their kids about people in wheelchairs. So it's really important for people not to lean or tap or, fool with our wheelchairs. So it's a personal space, a mobility device. It can be disrespectful and even unsafe. Sometimes kids come running up to me when I have my joystick on, when my power wheelchair is on. And so that means the joystick is active. So as soon as that happens, I turn it off. I just turn it off because, then if they touch the joystick, nothing will happen, and then they won't cause an issue for themselves or for me. So that's really important. For manual wheelchairs, it's a little different, but with power wheelchairs, they see a joystick and ay, ay, ay. So really important. So what can you do, or what can we do, to um, to really work with people who are learning about wheelchair users? So speak directly, or, the people who are curious about wheelchair use. Speak directly to the wheelchair user, not to their companion. So a lot of times we have this, that people will talk to our companion or to our friend or to a nurse, and they don't talk to us. All of a sudden people think we're deaf and dumb because we're in a wheelchair, and that's as you can see, that's not the fact. Get to eye level. Now, you don't always have to do this. If you're going to talk to the person for a little while, yeah, it's good to sit down, be at their level, so we don't have to stretch our necks up there and have neck pain by the time we get home. So get at eye level with them. You don't have to kneel down, but just sit down. Use respectful, personal first language. A person who uses a wheelchair rather than wheelchair bound or confined to a wheelchair. So that's important. That's helpful. Don't make assumptions. Anybody who's looking at me could say, oh, she probably has a spinal cord injury, and I don't. So that's important. Not to judge or think, or you can always ask the wheelchair user if you go up and ask them. Ask intrusive, personal questions about their disability unless they volunteer the information. Some people in wheelchairs do not want to answer those uncomfortable questions. They feel that their personal information is private. It's medical, it's private, it's theirs, it's their pain, their suffering. They're not going to share it with the world and the store. So, you have to respect them and just say, I'm sorry that you have your condition, but I'm glad you have a wheelchair to get around and do what you need to do. So that's a different way of approaching it. So, be positive. And for us who use wheelchairs, we try to be ready to educate and be positive about it. Sometimes we're not feeling well, and we just want to finish up what we're doing. So you could run into a wheelchair user who's not feeling well and just wants to get through their task. So just know that is a possibility. But otherwise, we try to be prepared to answer questions, whether it's about purchasing a wheelchair, whether it is about using a wheelchair, or accessibility at home, which a lot of times it's about, how did you get a ramp, or how do you manage at home, all those kind of things. So, and we try to be available because we want people to have the information. We want them to not be afraid of purchasing a wheelchair, getting a wheelchair, So we want them to have the best outcomes, in dealing with their condition. And, people out there who come to my channel hear this. They hear that not only a person who is paralyzed use wheelchairs, and that gets their attention. It's like, I'll talk to my doctor tomorrow. So, and using a wheelchair has its pros and cons, and that's important to know that, you don't want to jump into a wheelchair, just jump into a wheelchair, because it's important for us to be stretching and standing up if we can, because it has to do with circulation, and it has to do with keeping the nerves we have as healthy as possible. So all of that goes into being a wheelchair user. So, as wheelchair users, we try to be approachable. We try to be realistic, I have to do a lot of stretching because the pain is up there. I do a lot of meds. Don't want to do more meds. So I prefer to do stretching and walking the little bit I can, and but I don't want to do more and more meds. And the wheelchair helps me to keep the pain down. And if that's the direction I need to go to, that's fine with me, So, and it's also about safety. Once you're in a wheelchair, sorry, my throat is a little groggy today. Once you're in a wheelchair and you are in public, you're a little bit more vulnerable. So that's important to know. I had a friend the other day who had some difficulties with his neighbor upstairs. They're very noisy and very problematic. And he had to make some noise in his apartment to fix something. So he banged on it. And then his neighbor came tromping down and banging on his door. So he didn't know what was going to happen next, but he just decided, he made a decision to open his door. He's in a power wheelchair, a very strong one, stronger than mine, and started walking the person, pressuring the person to get away from his door into the parking lot. And he was tired of the problem with this neighbor and just started venting his frustrations, but the neighbor wasn't listening. It was yelling back. Then the neighbor's roommate came out and they started at him. Now, there's a problem with this picture because he's disabled, they're not, and he put his hand on the guy's chest to keep him at a distance so they wouldn't hit him. So, it's like, what else do you do? And some neighbors who saw the situation came running out to rescue him because you want to respect a person with a disability. You don't want to attack him and say, he attacked me. Not possible. So there are some laws that protect us. However, we don't want to run into those situations. So, it's really important to keep an eye open for us, and help us out if you see something that's not right. We have our ways of protecting ourselves, but we have our limitations. So just know that people in wheelchairs out in public, we are vulnerable. And we try to be as prepared as possible. So I want to thank you. I don't want to make this too long, but I think that you get the idea in terms of, what is true, what is not, and what role you could play in helping us out, not helping us out. Just all depends on the wheelchair user. So, stay with us and get to know us. And if you see somebody in your store who's always bringing a wheelchair, get to know them. What's your name? My name is so and so. And if you open a conversation like that, then it's much easier for the wheelchair user to engage in that conversation. But we're cautious. So thank you so much for listening to this video, and because if you're a wheelchair user and your family has a hard time understanding why you're using a wheelchair, share this video. If they have questions about wheelchair users still, they can post a question here, or you can post it for them, and we'll be happy to answer. There are so many ins and outs of why people use wheelchairs, and it's important for them to understand why you would use a wheelchair, and not to put up a fuss about it. There's no sense in doing that. Your doctor might have recommended it. You might have just had to do it. My doctor recommended it, and my therapist said, you're going back into a wheelchair. I tried to get out of the wheelchair. She put me back in. So we do our best. What can I say? But I'm doing well in the wheelchair versus being out of the wheelchair. And that's the important part. I'm doing well. So hang in there, folks. Let's keep this conversation going. And feel free to give us a like, to share this video, especially with those who might need more information. And subscribe if you want to see more videos on my channel. That would be awesome. And I'll see you in the next one.